Well, Prasa's former CEO, Lucky Montana, has told Parliament that the Guptas promised to look after him. He also accused the then Transport Minister, Ben Martins, of introducing him to the Gupta family. Well, he joins us now. Mr. Montana, good evening. Thanks very much for talking to us. One statement, one of the statements that stuck out, there's corruption on both sides, the Guptas and the ANC. We need to fight both. Tell us what you meant by that.
Well, look, I think, thanks very much, Vuyo. Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, look, I think I needed to provide the inquiry, the parliamentary inquiry on Eskom with information about the activities of the Guptas. As you are well aware, they did try to manipulate the Prasa rolling stock tender, the 50 billion rand contract, and we fought with them. We had difficulties, but we managed to prevent them from manipulating that tender. And I think today I went into details to explaining to the committee what they tried to do. But yes, as you correctly mentioned, that was not the end. I dealt with the other corruption that happened, and some of it is the one that ultimately led me to the position that I am today.
Talk to us about the evidence you have that the ANC was, well, just as corrupt as the Guptas. What evidence do you have of that?
Well, I spoke. I mean, I provided the, in my, I don't know if you saw my full testimony, but I provide details about some of the deals that they wanted to get involved. I spoke, for example, about the demand that I paid 10% of part of the money that was due to a contractor to the ANC. I gave examples, for example, on there's an issue in my document about Enoch Godongwane. So I provided those details, and I explained that it's not only, yes, we must fight the Guptas, we must clean everything, all the wrong things they've been doing, but we shouldn't allow people who themselves are involved in corruption to hide behind the Guptas, and I think that was the main message I was driving today.
Do you know for sure that they were representing the ANC, or perhaps it was their way of trying to get you to do what they wanted?
Well, I was working directly with the ANC. I worked with his Treasurer General. So I'm not talking about people who were coming to me on behalf of the ANC. I'm talking about the ANC itself, and I'm a member of the ANC. I will not go into an inquiry and make damning allegations about things I do not know. I've got the facts. I've worked directly with the ANC, and if the ANC believes that what I was saying is not true, let them come and present an alternative version to the inquiry. But I presented the facts today.
Now, you wash your hands off the whole train tender, but on the other hand, you still maintain that it was a necessary investment for the country. How so, given the fact that, I mean, there were problems identified with the very trains, that they were oversized, for example?
Not at all, Vuyo. I've never accepted. Yes, I've read in the media. I think that even the last time I was interviewed on ENCA, I've heard a lot of stories about they remember that two sets of trains. There's a commuter trains, there's no issues there, and then there's the locomotives that people said were too tall. Today I took the committee in detail, and I even provided the committee with what is the railway standard and all of those things. So as far as I'm concerned, there are not tall trains in this country. It's only in the media, not in fact.
Well, I mean, in one of the interviews we actually did with you admitted as much, but washed your hands off, saying that you were not responsible for the tender, that as CEO you were dealing with other issues.
Not at all, Vuyo. I've taken full responsibilities, both for good things as well as bad things. I think that, you know, the only thing that I do not accept is when people say, like, he was involved in corruption, because I've never done that. But if you talk about trains, for example, as a CEO, I'm not involved in writing specifications for a locomotive or for a commuter train. But when you talk about the overall strategy on what we need to acquire, yes, those decisions were made by me and the board, and I fully stand by those decisions at that time.
Well, another interesting revelation from your evidence before that committee, in addition to you implicating the ANC directly, was, of course, the fact that when the Guptas failed to secure a tender for China South Rail, they tried to dissolve the board and get and have Mzwanele Manyi rather for chairperson. How did they do that? Who were their enablers? You have suggested that the minister may have been, but who else? Because it's going to be interesting to find out who were these people who were part of their network and like actively making sure that what the Guptas wanted, they got.
Well, look, I think the truth of the matter is that the Guptas had wanted to change the tender for new trains. They wanted it for themselves, or rather they wanted it to be awarded to their partners, China South Rail. We didn't allow that at all, and look, they put pressure on a lot of people. They put pressure on the Department of Transport that they changed the board of PRASA. They wanted me gone. They wanted Sfiso Teles as a chairman to be fired. But look, we didn't complain. We fought it out, and I think the Guptas lost, and that's what I think makes us proud. The fact that we ultimately bought the right trains that will serve South Africa for the next 40 to 50 years.
But who were these people who were doing their dirty work? Who were the people on the ground going to see ministers, going to the department, telling them what to do and when to do it?
Well, in my testimony, of course, I mentioned the name of Tony Gupta. Directly was involved in that. I mentioned the name of Duduzane Zuma. I've mentioned that, and of course, I think Minister Ben Martins is going tomorrow. He'll have to explain to the to the inquiry, for example, that how was it possible that the Department of Transport had a cabinet memorandum that is in line with what the Guptas wanted. So that I cannot answer. The department must answer. But I rejected that cabinet memo. I rejected the fact that they wanted to change the board, because I felt we were going through a very sensitive stage in the procurement of new trains, and there was no way we were going to change the board, and it's quite clear the Guptas wanted the board to be changed so that they can block all the work that we've done. And it's unfortunate that South Africa believed all these things at that time, and when I left PRASA, they said I left PRASA because I'm corrupt. But the truth of the matter is that I had to resign when I realized that different forces on both sides of the divide were fighting over the spoils. Everyone trying to control PRASA, trying to control its tenders, and that's what happened. And that is why today trains in a city like Cape Town are not actually working, precisely because the past 2 years no one has been doing work on railways. They've been focusing on who gets what tender or chasing after me more than they're focusing on the work at hand.
But people like Duduzane Zuma and Tony Gupta are outside of the state. What I'm trying to get at is who were these enablers within the government who are actually doing the work, who are saying, who said to who Lucky must go or this board must be dissolved? Because it is very easy for someone to stand up and actually make a claim. And if we were to know this network of enablers, that would help a lot of people a great deal.
Sure, but for me, the issue is that Tony Gupta, Duduzane Zuma said those things in my presence and in the presence of the minister. That's the first issue. Secondly, the memorandum that was drafted where they were bringing other people from as far as India, that they were bringing, for example, my brother Jimmy Manyi to chair the board. Those things were written, and I saw the cabinet memorandum from the Director General of the former Director General, George Mahlalele. But I know that George was opposed to the Guptas himself, but he has to be asked. He must come and testify and say how did he come, how did we have a memorandum that wanted to dissolve the board of PRASA in favor of a board that the Guptas had wanted appointed at PRASA.
Let's talk about you and Popo Molefe, who was the board chair. Do you not believe that Popo Molefe was trying to do some good, was trying to do what you are saying you've been trying to do all these years?
Look, Popo Molefe, I don't even want, you know, I wouldn't even want to attack Popo Molefe, because that is not my intention. I make a submission in the thing. I think Popo Molefe destroyed PRASA. I think that he was not working for the Guptas. That I'm very clear about. But he represented other political interests. He represented other economic interests. And the only thing he has achieved at PRASA, he spent a lot of money. He spent about almost 200 million rands investigating me, investigating everyone. He spent a lot of time cancelling contracts, because for him, things that were done by Lucky were wrong. We are seeing the results today, because the results are there to see. The train system has collapsed in the country, infrastructure has fallen apart, we see a lot of accidents. So I think that wherever he is, Mr. Molefe, he just had to look at himself in the mirror and say, did I do justice? Was what I did, for example, fighting with Lucky? And I think the reason why he fought with me, he had this false impression that I'm working for the Guptas. And I think wherever he is now, he realized that that was not true.
Whose political and financial interests did Popo Molefe represent?
Well, Vuyo, I've detailed it in the what is it called, in my testimony. I spoke about, for example, how the new board, how Popo Molefe got appointed by former Minister Dipuo Peters, how he got appointed. Dipuo Peters was working with the Treasurer General of the ANC at that time, Mr. Zweli Mkhize. Popo Molefe himself, he has made a lot of money at PRASA. If you look at it, for example, when he came there, he was facing a lot of difficulties. His company, Lireko, was actually in serious trouble. But one of the things Popo Molefe did, for example, was to organize 3 golf days organized by his development foundation. And all companies that were contracted to PRASA were required to attend that golf event and make contribution. That actually is a very serious conflict of interest, number one. But secondly, it is actually a serious act of corruption. And I think that those of us who haven't committed a crime were subjected to this ruthless scrutiny. But veterans like Popo Molefe, who did wrong things, are not subjected to this kind of thing. So I'm saying it, if Popo Molefe believes that I'm lying, I think he must just do the logical thing, request an opportunity to address the inquiry and put his version and see whether it correlates with the facts.
So you're saying Popo Molefe traded with the company whose board he was chairing?
Popo Molefe had golf foundations organized by his development foundation, golf days rather organized by his development foundation, and PRASA contractors, which means companies contracted to the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa when he was chairman. Actually on 3 different occasions had put money into this, and that is a serious, it's not only a conflict of interest, but is a serious act of corruption and even probably money laundering. I think that if the Hawks say they're acting, all these companies who have made contributions, they must explain why they were making contributions to this foundation, despite knowing that the PRASA chairman is actually, it is his personal foundation.
Now, some MPs are of the view that there should be a separate transport inquiry, that some of the things you said today were only the tip of the iceberg. Would you agree with that, and would you form part of that?
Well, no. Look, I'll be more than willing to spend a week at such an inquiry to provide as much information. And if anyone believes that Lucky Montana has done something wrong, let them put it there, let it be tested. You know, for me, I've got nothing to fear. And that is why, Vuyo, I kept on fighting precisely because I know that truth and history is on my side.
Lucky Montana, that's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much for talking to us. He's the former CEO of PRASA. After the break.